9:37 p.m. Um, Attorney Kelly, whenever you're ready to take the stand, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, and staff, as well as the public who are here tonight. My name's Kevin Kelly. I represent the town of Stratford in regards to this matter as an assistant town attorney, and I'm also have my law practice at 2005 Main Street here in Stratford. What we have before us is an affordable housing application. And when we were here on May 31st, we submitted a verified pleading because we believe that there was impairment to the natural resources of the state of Connecticut. And we intervened on behalf of the town under 22A-19. What you're going to hear tonight are some of the reports from our soil and wetlands scientist as well as our engineer with regard to how that's going to happen. In addition to that, I am also going to offer a letter written by the Connecticut Department of Environmental and Energy Protection, or Energy and Environmental Protection. And in specific, what I want to draw your attention to on this letter, which was written by Dawn McKay, who's an environmental analyst for DEEP, is that they say, according to DEEP information, there are known populations of state special concern, it's the eastern box turtle, in the vicinity of the project site. So I wanted to make sure that that got in the record, that there is a species of special concern located here. Now, what I'd like to do is, in the interest of time, I understand that time is tight, is to not rehash issues that have already been discussed. But I'm going to draw your attention to certain points that I think are important and move forward so that we can get necessary information into the record. As to the town reports, what I think you're going to read in the town reports from Mo McCarthy, who's the Director of Public Works, you're going to hear that the application was insufficient because it didn't identify whether they were apartments or condos. And that's important to the town with regards to garbage pickup and collection and who's responsible for the roads. That dovetails with what Andrea Beausavain from the Health Department talked about with regards to the insufficient and inadequate garbage and refuse containers and the lack of recycling bins. And she compared that to just similar developments here in town, as well as her experience in the health department. And it's nowhere on the site. So in that regard, this application is insufficient. The town engineer was a little bit more critical. He indicated that the development as planned does not have sufficient detail, contains numerous discrepancies, lacks required information, and backup documentation. So from an engineering perspective, our town engineer has said that they really haven't provided the necessary information to enable you to make an informed decision on this application. He pointed in specific to the offset of the private street and Alexandra Drive. And you'll hear from my engineer how that is a safety concern. He also indicated that there's no A2 survey. And that's an important fact. I know you've heard from Attorney Kubik that this application is really for a 15-acre parcel, not a 4-acre parcel. So the lack of the A2 survey is important because I think the A2 survey would have delineated a 15-acre parcel, which is what we're really looking at, a site that actually has a wetland on it and therefore should be referred outright to wetlands. But we believe there's an impact under 22A19 as an environmental intervener to request that you make that decision and send this over to wetlands for the protection of that natural resource. The town engineer also talked about the need to do a stormwater calculation to test the system at a 100-year storm, predominantly because of the potential for the closeness of those galleries to the wall, that we need to see what happens and what happens when you have that type of event, which all too often are happening more and more frequently with the climate change that our world is encountering. He also makes reference that because he wasn't informed that this was a 15-acre parcel, that the site is more than 4.6 acres and needs a full stormwater permit registration from DEP. So when we go to 15 acres, we need one of those. He also indicated that you need approval from the WPCA to connect to a sewer is necessary, as well as the fact that when you look at the site plan, there's no water on site. So you're going to need to get the approval of the water company, Aquarian, to be able to bring the water from where it is to the site in order to sustain the density that the applicant is asking for. With regards to the town reports, Deputy Chief Gottfried was one that I really wanted to bring your attention to, and for two real reasons. The first is that you have two fire trucks with aerial ladders that weigh in excess of 70,000 pounds. These vehicles, once set up, he stated, cannot tolerate more than a 5-degree front-to-back or side-to-side pitch in order to operate the tower boom. And they cannot operate in a road grade in excess of 8.5 feet, or 8.5 degrees. We know that the driveway is very steep at 12 to 13%, making it difficult, in the opinion of our deputy chief, to operate on that. Not to mention, it's on the north side of the property, which means that in wintertime, when you get ice on the road, it's going to be shadowed by the buildings, which means the ice will be there the entire winter, unless there's some sort of operation and maintenance program in place. At the base of that hill is a mere guardrail and a 20-foot drop. And you'll see in Deputy Chief's report that that's an operational hazard that he really doesn't want to put, if he doesn't have to, his personnel in harm's way. The other point is that the overall length of the trucks is anywhere between 45 and 46 feet long. Both trucks are 100 inches wide, which is 8.3 feet. And with side mirrors and outriggers to stabilize if they're going to use the tower boom, those are increase the width of the fire truck by 7 feet on each side, meaning that when the fire apparatus is fully deployed, it's going to be almost 22 and a half feet wide. And the development is very tight. And what I have here is a a blow-up of the internal radius, and what's highlighted in pink is the roadway, and that is 25 feet wide, which gives you about 1.5 feet clearance. So if somebody doesn't pull in very far or there's something else in the driveway, you're going to have difficulty setting up. Clearly, you can't set up on the slope on either end. And where it's highlighted in green, and from those two green spots, it's only 24 feet wide, which means you're even less, maybe 1.5 feet clearance to set up and operate. And when you ever see this happen, they're pulling everything off the fire truck. They have things all over the area. I'm offering that as an exhibit. So it's going to be very difficult to set up and operate this from a side-to-side perspective, and that's very tight. Not to mention, as Deputy Chief Gottfried pointed out, that if they use the boom in the rear of the property, it has problems with the high-tension wires. The other point that needs to be looked at is where is the snow removal storage on site? It's not delineated anywhere, and that when you look at if you just plow it in, that's going to take away from the width of the street, which then once again makes it difficult, if not impossible, for the fire apparatus to set up. And there has been no plan for snow removal or snow removal storage, let alone the ice on the north driveway, private street that comes in and out, access to the development. At this time, what I'd like to do is just talk about from the outset. As Attorney Kubik stated, and I would concur with this, there are some flaws in the application that are just fatal. One is that we're given a plan for 4+ acres when in fact the property is really 15 acres. And why is that important? Beyond the point of needing a stormwater permit, it's important because if we look at the entire 15 acres, you automatically include the wetland resource. Number two is that by only saying it's 4 acres, it only gave notice to those property owners that abutted the 4-acre parcel. There are other property owners that didn't get that notice, and basically what it did was violate a fundamental in American law, which is due process rights. Everybody needs to have the right to know what's happening to them and or their property. And by not looking at the parcel in its totality as it really is, they thereby denied those neighbors the right that they are privileged to have, to given the opportunity to come and know what's happening in their neighborhood and adjacent property. There was also no A2 survey, and I think that's linked to the fact that the parcel was only 4 acres, not 15. So basically what we have here is an incomplete application. Should have said 15 acres, should have noticed all the property owners, should have automatically been referred to wetlands. None of that happened. So I think that's a fatal flaw in the application. Not to mention, and you'll hear testimony from both from my engineer and the soil scientist, that there's inadequacies, inconsistencies. There's lack of detail and backup. So even as proposed, you aren't given the proper information to make the informed decision as to whether or not this application should be approved or denied. And for those reasons, we believe that the appropriate thing to do would be twofold. One is to send it to wetlands, and two, as proposed, deny. So at this time, what I'd like to do is call up my soil and wetlands scientist, who has 35 years of experience, Thomas Pietras.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Pietras, professional soil scientist, professional wetland scientist with my own personal firm of Pietras Environmental Group. Providing my resume, I have 30 plus years of professional experience. I prepared a few reports on this project. Initially, I prepared a report dated March 20th, 2016, and in that report, I reviewed site plans that were dated June 10th, 2015. The site plans were updated, and I prepared additional reports. I refer to these as an addendum report, and these are based on review of site plans that were dated April 15th, 2016. The first addendum report is April 23rd, 2016. And finally, I have a report dated May 28th, 2016. I need to apologize. The quality of this final report is not the best. It's an extra copy I brought. The good copy I left at home, but it's still legible. And then briefly, I'll summarize some of the findings that are presented in these reports. The purpose of the reports was to review the project and determine potential impacts to wetlands and watercourses. That was a primary concern. And I ended up focusing on two things, sediment erosion control from the project and stormwater control. The sediment control for this project, a very important component is their temporary sediment basin. The temporary sediment basin is going to be located in the area of proposed underground stormwater galleries. These are to be constructed in the western part of the site in close proximity to the retaining wall. The details on the temporary sediment basin are very sparse and insufficient for such a project. For instance, on site plan SP3, sediment erosion control plan, the figure, they show a figure for a temporary sediment trap, and it's only a generic figure. And it does not comply with what would be done for this site. Basically, what the sediment control, as I said, the information provided is very brief. And on plan SP3A, the information that's given on the temporary sediment basin says, I'll quote from the plan, dig retention area to act as a sediment basin during construction. Minimum volume required 2,418 cubic feet. Allow basin depth to increase up to 5 feet as site is being filled. Remove and truck off sites and sediment collected in sediment structure and install gravel infiltration system. And that basically is it for their narrative and information about the sediment control basin. You know, it shows the basin to be located in the area of the proposed stormwater galleries, but no dimensions provided for this basin. The basin itself is going to vary in dimension because the site is going to be filled. up to 20 feet in the area of the proposed sediment basin. So the sediment basin is not going to stay the same. It's going to change. It's going to change in size as the project is being filled and completed. There's very little information in the site plan. As I said, this is a critical component. The temporary sediment basin is a critical component of this plan because all drainage comes to this sediment basin. There is a concern, an additional concern about this sediment basin because the fines from the site are going to run down into this area, and more or less they're going to contaminate the soils that are in the proximity of the stormwater galley system, and this is going to slow these fines. These fines will tend to clog pores and slow infiltration in the proposed stormwater gallery system. There was very little mention of that. How you're going to clean out these pores? That could be that can have a critical effect on how the stormwater gallery system works. There is basically no detail to describe how this basin was going to operate as you're filling the site in 3-foot lifts. Supposedly, you would initially dig the basin below groundwater, below the existing ground elevation in the area of the proposed stormwater galleries. And then as the site's being filled, somehow you're supposed to lift up this detention basin up in the air as the site is being filled. It says to put according to the site plans, fill would be placed on the site in 3-foot lifts and compacted. How it's going to be compacted around the area of the temporary sediment basin, is not clear. It's just insufficient detail. And again, the sediment basin is a critical component of sediment erosion on the site. There's conservation staff comments about a concern for settlement. How it's going to affect the stormwater galleries. And this also applies to effects of settlement under the parking lot and how settlement may affect the retaining wall. As this sediment basin is being changed in size, it's being elevated, occasionally it would have to be cleaned out, you'd have to compact the soil. It becomes very problematic on how this is going to be constructed. And again, the site plans have very little detail on how this is all going to be done. It appears, although it's not really said in the site plan, that the temporary sediment basin will also act as a temporary stormwater basin. Because you have a 4-acre site, it's all going to drain to this one point. There is not information given on the size of the basin, how it's going to operate during storms to control stormwater runoff, whether or not it's been reviewed to make sure that it's going to be proper sized as the site is being filled, how you're going to maintain proper size of the basin. So all this is just not there in the plans. Failure of this temporary basin may likely, result in erosion of sediments that get eroded down in the direction of the wetlands and water courses. The pipe that this basin is going to drain to, if it became clogged, would sediments run over the wall? If you had a large storm event? It's just difficult to determine how well this is going to work. And if it doesn't work, obviously the sediments are going to be eroded, and you have wetlands and water courses downslope. The wetlands and water courses that are located downslope include Cemetery Pond Brook. This is a perennial water course. It's a large brook, and there's a large forested wetland system associated with this brook. So it does have a high-quality wetland system. So it is a sensitive area, and if you did have a lot of sediments eroded, get eroded into this wetland, you would have a very detrimental impact to these wetlands. It's been brought up before about the stormwater design for the system. According to the site plans, the proposed stormwater system on the site was designed for the 5, 10, 25-year storm events. However, it does not address larger storm events, and this was brought up by the Conservation Commission as well, the 50-year, 100-year storm events. What would happen under these large, is a system sufficient in size to store these events? If it didn't store the events, where would the water go? If you had very large storm events and it wasn't properly retained on site, there's a likelihood that you would have eroded channels develop downslope of this site where water would head in the direction of the wetlands and water courses. Yeah, basically the site is you're going to have a very large amount of impervious surface. You have underground galleries providing the detention for the site, and the size of the system has not been showed that it is sufficient to handle these large storm events. And that may also affect the stability of the wall. If the system was not capable of handling large storm events, it may affect the integrity of the wall, which in this case, the wall is holding back a tremendously large volume of fill. According to the site plans, there's 36,000 cubic yards of fill proposed to be brought onto this site. That summarizes, my concerns for the site plans. I emphasize there's a lot of lack of detail on these plans to ensure that you would have safeguards for the wetlands and water courses. And as far as the 50 and 100-year storm events, it really should be, the engineer should provide information that the system is adequate to hold these storm events. I'd be glad to respond to any questions the commission may have.
Yeah, any questions for the soil expert? Not Attorney Kelly, the floor is yours. Unless Attorney Bellis has any cross-examination.
Before you,
go ahead.
did you produce the map, or do you still have the copy?
On the March...
There was one of the reports has a map that I'd like
March 2016 report.
Mr. Pietris to...
Has a topographic map off the town GIS website. And it...
March 20th. Okay, this has the map he's referencing, and my question is, based on the topography, could you show the commission which way the water would exit the property and go, where does it go? Does it go towards the wetland resource?
Yeah, this is figure 3 in my March 20th, 2016 report. The proposed development area is shown as a rectangular box on the right side of the figure, eastern portion of the site. The proposed discharge area is located in the southwestern area. It's going to be a single point discharge from a pipe, and then from that point discharge, the slopes fall in a westerly direction where water would go almost in a straight line, the way the slopes fall toward the wetlands, which are located at the far western part of the site, which includes Cemetery Pond Brook.
Thank you, Mr. Pietris. We've also heard testimony that there's problems with this retaining wall, and in particular the underground galleries. Should this retaining wall fail, when I mean fail, I don't mean just a crack or a chink in the stone, But if the retaining wall should be totally breached and fail, where would those 36,000 cubic yards of fill go?
Well, any fill that gets eroded off the site, especially the larger amount of fill, goes downslope in a westerly direction, and it would go in the direction of the wetlands and water courses.
And would
Further
that
downslope.
impact the wetland resource?
If it reached the wetlands and water courses, yes, it would have a detrimental impact.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. So both the stormwater runoff and a potential breach of the retaining wall would effectively end up in the same direction, move in the same direction, and have a potential for prolific implications for that wetlands.
Yes.
Thank you. Attorney Bellis, want cross-examination?
Hi, Mr. Richards. How you doing? I just have a couple questions. I've read your report, and I saw that you were very careful to say that the proposed development will not result in any direct impacts to the wetlands and water courses, and that the property was well beyond the 250 feet, maybe 385 feet away. Is that still correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I saw that you had perhaps some suggestions and two alternatives. One was to perhaps put a larger catch basin in the CLP easement area.
Yeah, my report had included some recommendations.
Yeah.
Because my main concerns focus primarily on sediment erosion control and also on stormwater control. My recommendations were that the developer install a large temporary sediment basin in the CLMP right-of-way. It's a large area in there, it's open, the slopes are amenable for a basin in that area. You could construct it just downslope of the project. It could be large in size because it's a wide open CLNP easement and be only temporary. If they gave you permission to do that, you would have a much greater control of sediments leaving the site with a large basin versus the basin that presently is being proposed, which is going to be in an area of the gallery system. And also that constructing a basin in the CLNP right away that may, potentially you could also have a stormwater basin in that too if you receive permission from the CLNP.
And if the applicant were to implement your recommendations for having the temporary sediment basin or the alternative storm basin in that area, do you feel that, in your professional opinion, that would even have a greater likelihood of less impact or having no impact on the wetlands?
It would be a greater safeguard to the wetlands and water courses.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney.
Mr. Chairman, I have one follow-up. Despite the fact that your report indicated that there were no direct impacts, do you still stand by your professional opinion that if there's a substantial failure of the retaining wall, releasing the 36,000 cubic yards of fill, that there would be a negative impact on the wetland resource?
Yeah, there's a strong likelihood that if you had a significant failure in the wall that you would have sedimentation impacts to the wetlands and water courses.
Thank you. Now at this time, I'd like to call Timothy Casey, PE with 35 years of experience with STV. Pay particular attention to a couple of points. One is the 12% grade is not good engineering design and must be reduced to the 10% con-DOT maximum slope for commercial driveways. Two is that the underground stormwater system is flawed. And also with regards to traffic, that the offset with the private driveway and the Alexandra Drive is a safety concern. And to bring 36,000 cubic yards of fill will necessitate 3,000 dump truck loads. That's going to be a lot of traffic on the road, which their traffic study didn't contemplate. So keep that in mind as you hear the report.
Good evening. My name is Tim Casey. I'm a professional engineer with STV Incorporated. We're consulting engineers at 185 Plains Road in Milford. I have 35 years of professional engineering experience. I'm licensed in Connecticut and New York. I did a technical review of the documents that were submitted, and that's what I'd like to go over, and that's what I submitted into the record. The first being the drainage. The original grading plan showed 650 linear feet of 4x4 galleries, concrete chambers. And then it was revised in April 20th, 2016, and they grew to 896 linear feet of galleries. Now, along with that, there was a site engineering report, which was done originally June 11, 2015. That was revised April 15, 2016. But the backup, the documents in the report, kept the same original 650 linear feet of galleries. So even though the report was revised, the hydrographs, the computations are all based on the original 650 linear feet. So there's a disconnect there between what's shown on the plans and what's in the report. In addition to that, the rainfall intensity was an older factor that DOT used prior to November 2015. They've since changed that rainfall intensity, and it's increased. And you use that intensity to compute the runoff from the site. So they should be using, and this went into effect in November 2015, so they should be using the current DOT rainfall intensity figure. And we went through and used the new rainfall intensity figure, and we looked at the storage that they're providing, the greater storage, the 896 linear feet, and it's not enough. It would not hold the runoff from the 25-year storm event. Water would be coming out of the catch basin, the lowest catch basin grade, so it does not work. In addition to that, they should show and tell us what's going to happen with a 100-year storm event. If that happens, and it will happen, what happens to that runoff at the site, and how is it safely handled? My next topic was geotech. I know they said they didn't do any borings. They would do borings in the future, but they should do preliminary borings on a project like this to verify that the wall foundation and the building foundations that they're proposing will be stable. In addition to that, they're surcharging the site with 20 feet of fill, which is going to cause significant settlement to the wall, to the buildings, to the utilities, which could cause them to be non-functioning and the buildings uninhabitable. In addition to that, the fact that they're building these galleries, these infiltration, there's no bottom to it, there's no sides to it, there's stone all around it, and they're building these 9 feet from the retaining wall. The retaining wall has a 1-foot strip going up the back of it for drainage. And what that's going to do is short circuit the whole storage system. It's going to go over there, run down the back of the wall, and out the 4-inch drain pipes. Now, if those 4-inch drain pipes plug up, the water's going to build up behind the wall, and the wall will fail. the wall fails, then you're going to have sediment going to and in the direction of the current wetlands. They also have the discharge pipe for the system coming out of the wall, 14 feet up the wall, so it's going to run down the face of the wall. You're saturating the soil behind the retaining wall, so all the joints in the retaining wall, water's going to come out of there, and in the wintertime, when you have the freeze-thaw cycle, it's going to just accelerate and deteriorate that masonry wall. In addition, the geogrid reinforcement extends out from the back of the wall, and the storage system is 9 feet from the wall, and it's going to interfere with these geogrid systems. So you really should design the wall and then see where you can put these storage systems, so it doesn't interfere with the geogrid which supports the wall. My next comment was on utilities, and I know there has been some talk about that, and what I said with it, you should at least get a tentative approval from CL&P to be able to build this wall within their property, because as soon as you start pulling that wall back, you have problems with the driveway, which is already at a steep maximum grade of 12%, and you're going to have to make it steeper in order to accommodate the wall that's moved in. Then they were proposing a guardrail system on top of the masonry wall, which they say will stop a 72,000-pound emergency vehicle coming down that 12% grade. And I personally think you're going to be building some sort of guardrail system in front of the retaining wall. And they definitely need more details on that. There, here again, if you have to build something in front of the retaining wall, it's going to affect the slope of the driveway. It's going to make it steeper than the 12%, and that's, as I said, that's a maximum now. In addition to the driveway, there should be a crest vertical curve where the driveway slope comes up and meets James Farm Road. If you look at their profile, they're just showing a 12% grade coming up at an angle point. That's not acceptable. There should be a shelf at the top of the driveway so the car can come up, level up somewhat, and be able to see, have a sight distance on James Farm Road. In order to put in a vertical curve, it's going to push out the roadway. It's going to make the driveway steeper again. Again, it cannot be steeper. It's already at 12%, which is the maximum. So that should be fully designed. That vertical curve at the top of the driveway should be designed. They should not show an angle point. The erosion control plan, as others have said, it lacks a lot of detailed information, and you don't quite understand how they're going to do it. They should provide a narrative exactly how they plan that to operate. They have a detail. They have a section that shows the stone berm and the weir crest, but it doesn't say where that applies, whether it's the whole length of the erosion control, the 163 feet, or whether it's just a portion of that. It's very unclear. And the sedimentation basin is as someone already stated, it's being proposed at the same location where the galleries are being proposed. So exactly how does that work? How do you put the galleries in and still have a sedimentation basin that works? So in summary on these civil issues, we have the design of the storage system where they use the wrong rainfall intensity. The computations, the hydrographs are incorrect. It's with the old system that's been revised. Geotech, there is no geotech. There's no geotech boring, so you can't really determine what type of wall should be constructed or proposed. And they should, they've got to relocate that underground storage system. It is just, it's much too close to the retaining wall. You have the issue with the encroachment onto CL&P property and getting that permission so you can determine how steep the driveway has to be. And then you need a vertical curve where the proposed driveway meets James Farm Road. And again, the erosion control, you need a narrative, additional details, and design modifications for it to work. I also have comments on the traffic report. This was done by a senior traffic engineer with STV, Patrick O'Mara. He's a licensed PE in Connecticut. And I'd just like to touch on some of the issues that he brought up. He was, originally he was questioning when the vehicle counts were taken, whether it was done when school was in session, because there's a couple of schools nearby. He was asking about the vehicle turning movements, whether the counts were classified for vehicle types. That was not, those items were not indicated in the report. The trip generation was based on the mid-rise apartment land use from the ITE's Trip Generation 9th edition manual. This information was compiled from the survey done in the 1980s in Maryland. And what we're recommending and what we have done, STV, we've done trip counts in Stratford at a condo complex, Shakespeare condo complex, and we determined that the trip counts for 34 condo units per unit were a lot greater than what is being proposed in this report. So we think they should use current data, and we think the traffic report should be done again, because they're using very low numbers for the trip counts. And he also reviewed the offset intersection, and he, from a senior traffic point of view, he said the site should be considered a safety concern. And he quoted a couple of different publications, one being the Federal Highway Administration Office of Safety, Access Management in the Vicinity of Intersections. Technical summary is that designers should limit locating driveways within functional area of an intersection to improve safety. And the functional area of the intersection includes upstream and downstream of an intersection that are influenced by the distance traveled by vehicles on the major road during the precipitation reaction time of motorists turning to or from the minor street, and by vehicle deceleration distance while the driver maneuvers to stop or slow to make the turn at the intersection. The Texas Transportation Institute Roadway Safety Design Synthesis study examines the safety effect of driveways located within 250 feet of rural intersections on the major road. And their findings indicate that an increase in crash frequencies with an increase in driveways located within this 250 feet. James Farm Road, it's within 50 feet of it. So we are concerned about that offset intersection. And the last is the construction phase operation. Knowing that we're talking about something like 3,000 tri-axle trucks that'll be used to bring the fill into the site, that this should be, and it was not, taken into account in the analysis, in the traffic analysis. So they should do a traffic analysis for construction phase operations. That completes my comments, and I take any questions you have.
Any questions from the commission at this time? Attorney Bellis, I don't know if you want to...
Mr. Casey, I heard you testify that you believe that, based on more recent rainfall reports, that the 800 linear feet of galleys would not be sufficient.
Correct.
That's the crux of what you're saying. So,
Using the new intensities.
new intensities, yeah, I stand corrected.
Use the microphone, please, when you talk. Thank you.
Yeah. Couldn't you just add more galleys to take into effect any shortage you believe exists?
You could, except we have an issue where they're located, too.
Okay, but more
But
galleys would alleviate the
Yes.
problem.
Yeah.
And
What I was just trying to say is that, the drainage report, the design report, just does not reflect what's on the plans. There's a disconnect.
I got it. So how many more feet do you think is needed of galleys to accommodate what you believe would be appropriate?
I don't know.
Okay. And if we were to install a catch basin in the CL&P easement, would that help?
I don't see how that's going to help.
Okay. You would agree with me that what we show is a driveway for residential units, not a road or street?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I have no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Bellis. Attorney Kelly, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tim. Okay. What I'd like to do is to offer several letters from town residents. One is from Mrs. Janet Jacobian, dated June 1st. Another is from Janet Dinahanian, dated June 13th. A third and fourth are from a John E. Delaney Jr., dated June 19th, both dated June 19th. Now, one of the aspects that you need to look at when we look at and evaluate an affordable housing application is the town's affordable housing. And you're going to have to do a balancing act to determine whether or not the development outweighs the need for affordable housing. In 2015, which is the most recent Department of Community and Economic and Community Development statistics, the Affordable Housing Appeals List has Stratford affordable percentage at 5.97%. So because we're under the 10% threshold, we fall under Connecticut General Statute 8-30G. Stratford does have a history of approving affordable housing developments. There's been Shakespeare Estates, Cut Spring Village, Otis Street Condo, Avalon Bay, and most recently this commission approved Longbrook Station on Main Street. In 2001, the town of Stratford hit its high water mark with regards to that affordable housing appeals list at 8.22%. But in 2006, the 8.22 was reduced to 4.82% when Stony Brook Co-ops and the Success Village paid off their government loans and therefore were no longer included in the restrictive Connecticut 8-30G definition, despite the fact that those units remained at the same price. They remained affordable. But they came off the calculation. Since 2006, Stratford's affordable housing stock has increased. It's gone from 4.82% to the 5.97% which is a 23.8% increase over the past 10 years. And if we look at adding back in those units at Success and Stony Brook, you'd find that you're going to approach 9.37%. If we took the 8.22%, subtracted out the 4.82%, you came to a delta of 3.4%, add in the current amount of 5.97%, and you get to 9.37%. I know the hour's getting late, and we don't need a lot of numbers, but this is important for the record to demonstrate that Stratford is making efforts to increase its affordable housing stock. And in many instances, it's because of factors beyond our control. These units going off their government loans or the lack of, I'm going to say, marketability of CHAFA loans, the numbers reduce. According to fiscal year 2016 income limits documentation system, the median family income for Stratford is $86,300. So I'm going to give you what a market approach based on real economic factors are. Using this figure, 30% would be $25,890 per year, or $2,157.50 per month. Data from the U.S. Census Bureau for 2010 to 2014 ACS, using tenure by housing cost as a percentage of household income in the past 12 months, would reveal that of the 3,946 renter-occupied housing units in Stratford, 765, or 19.39%, have housing costs at 29% or less, where household income exceeds $75,000 or more. Basically, we have affordable housing stock. So why is this important? It's important because as you go forward and you're going to look at the information that's been presented to you, you got to bring yourself back to 8-30G. And because we're under the 10%, the Commission, if it's inclined to deny the application, has a burden to prove several factors. The first, your decision is necessary to protect substantial public interests in health, safety, or other matters which the Commission may legally consider. So from a health and safety perspective, you've heard evidence and testimony that talked about the sightline problem when cars approach the top of the driveway at the intersection of James Farm Road. Because there's no vertical curve, the car can't see and has poor sight lines, causing a traffic concern. We also know that the offset at the intersection of the entrance and Alexandra Drive is a health and safety concern. The fire apparatus setup and response, both because the roads are too narrow, the failure to identify storage, snow storage, as well as what a truck has to do in order to get into this, delays response time at a time when time is critical. We also have a problem with the ice and snow on the north side and the potential for the truck at 70,000 pounds going down this steep slope may not be able to be stopped by the guardrail, which Deputy Chief noted. We have a flawed underground storage system, and you've heard testimony that there could be a substantial breach of the retaining wall. And if the 36,000 cubic yards of fill are released, the whole backside of the property goes. Another health and safety problem. As well as just the close proximity to the high tension wires and the operation of the tower boom in relation, if they're needed, could also create a health and safety issue. Connecticut courts have also held that wetlands and the protection of the wetlands is also a proper interests that can be protected under 8-30G. And you've heard from our soil scientist that if there is that breach of the retaining wall, that there would be an impact on the wetland resource. So that's the first issue that you have to deal with is the decision necessary to protect one of those interests? The second is that such public interest clearly outweighs the need for affordable housing, and that's where the information I just stated comes into play. Because what I'm showing you is that in reality, Stratford is making a bona fide effort to encourage and develop affordable housing. We've had a 23% increase over the past 10 years. If we didn't lose success in Stony Brook, you'd have approaching 10%. And then when you look at the real economics of the true market indicators, we have close to 19% of our housing stock is affordable, meaning that a third of or less of your income would be there to pay for your housing. So when you look at this and say, well, here in Stratford, where we are making these improvements, do we have to turn our blind eye to our stewardship of the environment and the protection of our neighbors in the houses in which they're going to live in order to develop affordable housing when we have a record of success? And I would argue that based on that record, with these health and safety issues, that it tips in the favor of denial, because Stratford is unlike most towns in Connecticut where we're actually making progress. And then lastly, such public interests cannot be protected by reasonable changes to the affordable housing development. Here we've had numerous input from the town and from other parties, and the developer is sticking by the development as proposed. I think you'll see in many of the town's reports, as well as others that have been entered into evidence, that there are alternatives, but that the developer hasn't decided to go in that direction. One that I can think of is having a 10% grade on the driveway rather than a 12 to 13%, making sure that there's proper borings and footings that the retaining wall will hold, and if something hit it, wouldn't go off a 20-foot ledge. So there have been alternatives proposed, but they haven't resonated with the developer. And so then when you look at this as proposed, it doesn't make the final analysis one that you would change your decision, at least in our opinion. So based on that, and looking at the affordable housing, the town would urge that the commission look at this, evaluate the information, balance it against the need for affordable housing in town, look at whether or not there's a feasible and prudent alternative, and I think you'll come to the conclusion that this site, this proposal on this site as proposed needs to be denied. The last comment I'm going to make tonight is just, you've heard differing opinions with regards to Judge Radcliffe's decision. I would just recommend that you read it. Read it and look at the language that he uses. He does not say that this cannot go or that there is a prohibition to sending it to wetlands. I think he leaves that door wide open, and we would ask that you go through it and make the referral to wetlands. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Kelly. Is there any questions for Attorney Kelly? I have a couple, just regarding a lot of the housing demographics and statistics. With Stony Brook co-ops and the Success Village, I didn't catch what year those came off the books for 830G calculation. I know it's pretty recent. It was in the past decade or so.
Yeah, I believe they came off in 2006, because that's when the numbers went from 8.22 to 4.82, and I think that's when those developments came off.
And theoretically, what would it take for those developments to be reconsidered for 830G? I know one of them would be changing the legislation about 830G, but is there anything in terms of deed restrictions or public subsidies or anything that could be done to bring those back into 830G compliance?
Yeah, if you just look at the statute itself and what the definition of an affordable housing unit would be, you would just want to meet one of those delineated definitions. The reason these was they were publicly financed through a government loan. So if you did that once again, you could bring all those units back on to our affordable housing appeals list. Deed restrictions, there's abatements, tax abatements, there's a whole host. It's all delineated in statute that's already exists for municipalities to use to increase their housing, affordable housing stock as defined by a Connecticut General Statute 8-30G.
Thank you, Attorney Kelly. Is there any questions?
Attorney Kelly, I'm sorry, I missed your first couple minutes of testimony. Can I ask you who you're here representing?
Certainly. I'm here representing the town of Stratford.
The town of Stratford?
The town of Stratford, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Attorney Kelly? Thank you for your testimony, Attorney Kelly. Attorney Bose, I don't know if you want to cross-examine or... Also, if you're prepared for rebuttal, please feel free to...
I have my rebuttal witnesses, and I know you have a policy of stopping at 11 o'clock, so I don't, just tell me what to do.
Keep going.
Keep going. Okay, I'll try to make it quick. I'd like to call Manny. Manny Silva was the engineer on this project, if you can keep it brief.
Yep, yeah, I'll try to keep it really quick, guys. Good evening, Manny Silva from Rose T-Zone Company, 35 Brentwood Avenue. There were, as you can see, there were some comments and some alternatives suggested. To be fair, I like, I've been in front of this commission, and I accept peer review, and I welcome it. But I got the letters yesterday, and some of the letters were actually dated quite a while ago, and then it was only submitted yesterday, the day before yesterday. So I just in that case, that's why I have these here to hand out today and rebuttal of those that I received yesterday. The first one is a letter from STV. I'll really go through it real quick. I won't read it word for word. Just to address some of his concerns, and it's all due respect. Here's the copies. I think I might have gave him all my copies. Sorry. So the first comment was on the galleries and how there's a disconnect from the lineal footage on the report versus the actual site plan. There's a reason for that. The software that we use to model the hydrology assumes that galleries are a 4x4 box that don't have any concrete inside that takes up any volume. So what we did is we used the software to model the actual volume of water we needed to hold, and then I took the specifications of the precaster for the concrete galleries and saw that, and I sized the actual site plan to that volume that's modeled in the software. So the difference is there's a volume of concrete that takes up that void inside the 4x4 gallery. Therefore, I had to make the galleries larger than the software suggested. The next one is about the intensity. Again, this project was initiated well before the change, but that change hasn't been implemented in the DOT's stormwater manual. So the drainage manual, if you go on the website today and go pull the stormwater manual under, I have it there, Chapter 6, Appendix B for the 25-year storm is 5.7 inches of rainfall in 24 hours. That's what we used. And just as a reminder, the proposed runoff from the 25-year storm for this proposed site will be reduced by 7.8% from the existing condition. Then the geotechnical questions. There wasn't any borings conducted, and the reason is because it's this is a preliminary plan. When you go to, it's very irregular to have borings done for a zone change or for a site plan. That is something that's done after the fact, where we do extensive borings on the site. We have a geotechnical engineer look at what we're doing, and then they'll have recommendations on how to fill the site, how to construct the footings, how to build the wall and the buildings. So that will be all done prior to building permit, because that's who reviews these things is your building officials. They may even ask us to submit it to a peer review, so another set of engineers look at it. But that's at the building permit process. It's very irregular to have it at this point. So that's basically about the geotechnical, I believe. And then there was this comment about the gallery system being too close to the wall. So the wall does have a column of gravel, and it has a drainage system. So that's why everybody keeps bringing hydrostatic pressure. What does that mean? That means the weight of the water bearing on the wall, right? So if you have a drainage system in place, the water never builds up behind the wall. It's always draining continuously, okay? You have 40-foot walls similar. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the Home Depot in Bridgeport. That's a 40, 50-foot wall. That's the same gravity block construction, and that's been there for 25 years now, and it's a much higher wall than this. And that also has a free draining system behind the wall, just like this one will, to eliminate any kind of buildup of hydrostatic pressure. So there is no hydrostatic pressure. It's designed to not allow hydrostatic pressure to build up, so it's not a factor. I do agree that with in my response here, the bottom of the galleries are about 15 feet above the base of the wall, so the plume, basically how water drains through water, is straight down and then at a 1-to-1. So if the bottom of the galleries is 15 above the bottom of the wall, then there's a possibility that the maximum that plume can go is about 15 feet away. So I agree, maybe we will move those galleries in preponderance of, in a great deal of caution to probably should be about 15 feet away from the wall. Now, there is room for them. We have about, if we put them in one single row right across the buildings, they could be about 35 feet away. So that's more than enough room to pull those galleries away from the wall and not have that cycle of water as the STV engineer, Mr. Casey, had stated. So the discharge of the storage system goes down to a level spreader. So it comes out of the wall and into kind of a swale that's about 91 feet long. And there's a calculation in the engineering report under Appendix B where it shows that the reason why I have this, I spread out the water over 91 feet over a level spreader, is to slow that water down to the point that it won't erode grass. Okay, so that's 1.33 feet per second. If you get your water flow below that velocity, it won't cause erosion in a grass area. Excuse me. The geoforce, the geogrid reinforcement proposed in the retaining wall can conflict with the groundwater storage. Again, he's correct. We do build a wall first. That's how I think in my presentation a couple weeks ago, I stated that the first thing is to build a wall. And that is we build a wall from the high side, so basically our side. As we fill, we put in those geogrids, we compact it, and then the excavators actually drop the blocks like Legos from the James Farm Road side of the wall. And then once that row of blocks is put in, you start to fill that in. Okay, and then you go on to the next one. So you always set a block above grade, and then you fill against it. So then the actual stormwater galleries will come in after the fact of that, and then they'll be outside of the geogrid wherever they may lay. Geogrid is usually for something like this, depending on the soil type. So if you have like a very high friction soil, which we most likely would bring in as a structural fill, which is like a gravel, something with a lot of stones in it, the geogrid requirement is a lot shorter. If you have something that's slippery like clay, or things of that nature, which we wouldn't bring on site, I mean, that's not a structural fill, then you would require a longer geogrid. Existing utilities, he has a concern about the easement and that it needs approval. And we agree we need to get an approval from CNLP prior to building permit. Again, our encroachment is in the right-of-way. It's not underneath the wires. If you look on the plan, you can see the bases there, and then you refer to the picture that was submitted prior to by the opposition. You can see that the wires are actually pretty close right near the bases. So there's a good amount of distance between the edge of the right-of-way and where the actual wires lie. So we don't anticipate any issues with CNLP, but we do have to file an application, an application with them to do the work. The guardrail. So the guardrail will be an integral system in the retaining wall and will be installed in concrete blocks, inside the concrete blocks. So since that question comes up, I just want to pass out some literature on the actual, and I'll keep one for the attorneys. There you go. There's this notion that, which respectively, I mean, I know if people aren't familiar with the system, they could see that it would need to be, you would need to have like 2 or 3 feet in front of the wall to set a guardrail, things of that nature. Just so you know, my experience with these, I've actually constructed many of them. I mean, I have 2 that were done just recently, and I have one that's going up right now in Shelton. So I'm very familiar with the system. So if you look on the front page here, you can see I underlined in paragraph 3 that the walls can be as high as 50 feet high or taller. And as if you could see there how in that first picture that I kind of circled, there's a large quarry truck on top of the wall. This is a 15-foot wall that they're about to continue building higher. And as you can see there's a silt fence right on the base of the wall. And as you see it going around, there's trees and area that's non-disturbed. So that's that's around 5 feet there. So when you build these walls, the face of the wall, you can actually, these are real good for building near wetlands and things of that nature because there is very little disturbance required on the downhill side of the wall. This is the perfect system for something like this, where we don't want to have any equipment in the CLMP right away. All the equipment will be uphill of the wall. Okay, so as you can see there, I mean that's a 15-foot wall already. You can see the guy standing there, kind of for reference, and each one of those blocks is 30 inches tall. So you can count them up. If you turn the page, if you look right here, you can see the different types of pieces, and the one I circled was the cap piece. So that's the piece that's going to be on top. As you can see, it's got like a Jersey barrier shape to it, and the reason that is because you can fill right up to the face of the wall on the top, and they actually say that you could pave right to there if you needed to, if you didn't have a guardrail or a fence. And if you turn, you could actually see right here kind of an illustration of how that's done. You can see it says impervious fill right up to the top. So I also have here a detail of how this would happen, a CAD detail, because it's more of a construction detail. As you can see here, you have the Bronco block wall underneath. Obviously, this is not showing the height that we require, but you can see that the cap unit goes right to it tapers off to the face of the wall almost, and that there is, and you can see in those pictures too of the pieces, there's these large holes that you could put the guardrail posts right into them. So what my detail is for these is to put a concrete sonotube and then put a 10-inch steel guardrail beam right into the sonotube and fill it with concrete. So how does that compare to your normal highway guardrail? Normal highway guardrail is just a 10-inch beam just pounded into the ground. Okay, when a car hits it, you see those beams flying all over the place. They come right out of the ground. This is different. This is actually going to be grouted right into the wall. That beam isn't going anywhere, okay? So if anything, this system here is at a higher, is above and beyond what's expected on the regular highways. And I just, so that was my quick thing on the wall. The crest of the curve, the crest of the curve is, the difference is that if you had a roadway, a private roadway, that you had to design this for, and it had a design speed of 25 miles an hour, sure, you need vertical curves, and if it was a commercial driveway, say, for Home Depot or for anything that has a high traffic generation, that you would require kind of that level area. But I'd like to have one of the commissioners help me here, because I owe you an answer on when the fire department said degrees versus percent grade, right? So 5 degrees is 8.75%, okay? 8 degrees is 14%. And I want to show you what 8 degrees or 14% looks like. So that's about 0, right? Let me know when it hits 8.
Going up, down. I'm over really quick.
So that right there is 14% grade.
No, down a little bit more.
A little bit more?
No, down more. More. You're in the 9s. Yeah, you're good. You're 8.4.
So
There you go.
there it is, right there. That's 14% grade. Our driveway is 12% grade. Now, heard a lot of testimony of people saying that the 12% grade is very steep. Now, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to. To me, that's not very steep. So your normal parking lot, so like when you open your door, it doesn't close automatically, is probably 5%. And 12% is your normal residential driveway. You see it all the time. You have streets in Stratford, like Warner Hill and Orinoco Lane, that are somewhere in the 20s and 25%. So to say that there's some kind of that there's some kind of thing that's dangerous or unique about a 12% grade, I don't understand that. And also, when the driveway comes down to the first set of units, it flattens out to 6%, to half that. So that's flat. I mean, 2% is the minimum I recommend, so you don't get little bird baths all over the pavement. That's a minimum grade. So this, I just wanted to demonstrate that 12% is actually not that steep at all. And you find much steeper throughout town. Soil and erosion control plan. I mean, I really detailed it. I know that my colleagues disagree, but I actually did it to the general permit standard. So meaning that if this was a site, and then just to also on a little side tangent to correct what Attorney Kelly said, you only require a stormwater permit if you disturb over 5 acres. So you could have a 15-acre site, and if you disturb less than 5 acres, you don't require a stormwater permit. And so that's the distinction. But I designed this with the narration. If you look at SP3 and SP3A and SP6, I mean, that is one of the longest narrations you're going to see on a soil and erosion control plan. If you look at the site that I did for FedEx Ground, if you look at those plans, it's very similar. And that was a disturbance of over 15 acres. Okay? So I think the soil and erosion control plan is sufficient. The sediment basin, the outflow weir, or the outflow lip, is over the whole length. And then that discharges to a double silt fence. So we got a basin that collects the water, settles out the material, any kind of sediment in it, and then that overflows to a double silt fence. So that's a silt fence with hay bales inside of it. Silt fence on the front, hay bale, silt fence on the back. There isn't going to be anything leaving the site with that kind of system in place. So what I normally do is, yes, I do put the sedimentation basin where the gallery system is. And why do I do that? Because there's going to be a hole there already, right? You're going to need a hole there. The contractor's going to need a hole to put the galleries in. So why not use that hole as your sedimentation basin? Just makes sense to me. I'm not opposed to moving it to somewhere else, like underneath the CNLP. That's fine. But to me, it just makes more sense to have it where the gallery system is. And so what happens when you're ready, by the time you're ready for putting in the galleries, the site's pretty stabilized. You're already putting in storm drainage, so your pipes, your catch basins, they're already going in, and then your galleries go in. So as soon as you take all that sediment, that silt that was settling in that basin, which means it was doing its job, you then replace it with clean gravel, and you put your galleries in place. That all happens within a couple of days. And now you have your final stormwater system, which is now going to control volume and water quality for the duration of the construction project. And that's actually better than what the temporary solution is. See what I'm saying? Because the temporary sedimentation basin, all it's doing is water quality, water quality cleaning. The final system will actually reduce volume and clean the water. And then I promise you my last thing, and it's only two things, is my response to the fire department. So I don't know if the commissioners noticed, but on SP1, I actually had turning radiuses ghosted. I mean, they're like a little bit faded away, but they're on there. And basically what I did is once I got this letter, I looked at the template that the fire marshal had sent over, and I compared it to mine, and it's exactly the same. And the reason was because I do a lot of work in Stratford, do a lot of commercial jobs, and of course I'm designing my sites to that fire truck. So there was the question about, actually I have here what Attorney Kelly had spoken about, that the site is designed for H20 loading, which is 32,000 pounds per axle. So the fire truck only really puts out, the subject fire truck puts out 75 PSI and 24,000 pounds per axle. So we exceed that by a good factor. And that the grades in between the buildings and the parking areas are at 2% or 1.5 degrees. So that's actually in the units that the fire department's using. That's 1.5 degrees, which they only require 5 degrees. The entrance driveway, again, 12%, that's 6.8 degrees, which is well below what the fire department can work within at 8.5 degrees. Again, I figured out how to do it on my phone too, so if there's any other questions on that. The overall length of the truck, obviously it's in inches and feet. Attorney Kelly was correct. The overall width that the fire truck needs is 22.3 feet. We provide at least 24 feet throughout the site on all the aisles and driveways. And that's it. And if I have any questions.
Manny, how many erosion control sediment plans have you done, approximately?
Since 2002, I'm approaching 2000.
And how many of those have required a biological survey?
0.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Michael Klein. I'm a biologist and a soil scientist. My office is in West Hartford. Just a couple of very quick comments.
Sir, could you just speak into the microphone?
Sure.
Thanks so much.
Sorry.
Thank you.
As you heard from Mr. Silva, it's not typical to include a detailed biological survey as part of an erosion and sediment control plan. Our business has been involved in doing hundreds of biological surveys over the years. They may be required, but they're not part of the erosion and sediment control process. Mr. Danzer's incorrect in that regard. His opinion about the requirements for a wetland permit. Every site in Stratford, in the state of Connecticut, and in fact the world, drains to a wetland or a watercourse. They occupy the low points in the landscape. Some of them are closer and some of them are further away, but that's not the appropriate criteria to determine when a wetland permit is required. He notes that he reported a box turtle to DEEP in 2005. We've been looking at this site for quite some time. In 2008, the DEP did not have on their natural diversity database any indications of listed species in this portion of Stratford, in the Roosevelt Forest, or the areas that immediately abut this site. We did recheck that in most recently, and in 2016 there is in fact a database hit there. We suspected, knowing the general characteristics of the area, that it was box turtle, but we did send a letter to DEEP. It has a similar content as the letter that Mr. Cresswell provided you, the March 24th, 2016 letter. We waited quite some time to get an answer, but ours came back on June 17th. I have several copies for the commission. And the interesting thing is that in the interim, DEEP has tightened up or made more stringent their protocol for box turtle protection. It's certainly appropriate, and we would be completely agreeable to implementing that at this site. As I said, we just got that back.
Are you submitting both of these?
Oh,
Or just this one?
this,
Okay, great, thank you.
this was my letter from the record, I think, for quite some time. The DEP's recommended protocol, in fact, the updated protocol, were certainly acceptable to include that as a condition of approval for the project. Dr. Danger also made a comment about the fact that he suspected there was a potential vernal pool. In fact, there are no vernal pools on this property in the area that's subject to the flow. In other words, from this site drains down to Cemetery Brook. There are no vernal pools in that area. Oh, sorry. Dr. Danger also made a comment about a point source discharge. At least I think it was him. Let's see. There is no point source discharge from the site. The discharge, as Manny explained, goes through a very extensive level spreader. We have used that design. It's a substantially larger level spreader than would be required with the DEP's design criteria, but we've used that on sites that are substantially steeper than this, slopes that are approaching 1-to-1, 2-to-1, and it's a very successful design, and it does prevent significant amount of erosion. I think that's all I have for you, unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? If not, Attorney Bellis, the floor is yours.
Hi again, Kermit Hua, KWH Enterprise LLC, Meriden, Connecticut. I just received this comment letter from STV today regarding the traffic study. as a preface, I would just want to say the main points raised in this letter are mostly items that are technical in nature with no fixed answer. So it really, in other words, you can approach these individual issues one way or the other. It really depends on the context of the topic. As you might expect, I stand by my approaches in my traffic study, or put it another way, I think, in this case, Mr. Patrick O'Mara of STV Inc. New York office is misguided and wrong on all major points. If I may go over the points quickly. The first issue Mr. O'Malley raised was traffic counts. The traffic counts were collected before I was brought on board by Rose Tissot, the civil consultant. I checked with them. It was collected in June 2015 during the school period. In other words, before the summer recess of the school. So that's response to his first point. And Mr. O'Mara also raised the issue of whether ATR counts have been collected. Actually, we did collect it, similar to what the police department did during a weekday. Actually, our weekday counts is a little bit higher than what the police department data show in their letter, and the average speed is similar to what the police department report said. So there's no differences in the data between us and the police department. The main issue Mr. O'Mara raised is trip generation. Specifically, he suggested that instead of using the trip rates from the industry standard, which is IT trip generation manual, IT stands for Institute of Transportation Engineers, he suggested we should go out and have a survey done at a similar facility. Now, you do these kind of things when IT doesn't provide adequate data, as Mr. O'Mara raised as an example in his letter. In this case, a development called the Shakespeare Estate, which is near a public transportation hub. In our case, it is a typical suburban development, whether you call it condo or apartment. It's a typical suburban development. It's exactly the kind of development that you use IT trip rates for. Because IT trip rates, they have many samples. In this case, Mr. O'Mara is essentially asking us to throw away those IT data, which was based on 7 samples, and to collect data from 1 sample. I just feel statistically that's not a wise move. So the other issue Mr. O'Mara and Attorney Rubin also raised is the intersection offset. What's interesting is Mr. O'Mara quoted a publication from Texas Transportation Institute for rural intersections. This makes me really doubt whether Mr. O'Mara, from his perch in the New York City office, really familiar with this location, because this is a typical suburban area. It is really not rural. Actually, while we were having the meeting, I checked the DOT website and looked at their map for Stratford. Typically, if you have sort of 2 areas of town, one rural, one urban, you have a line clearly drawn on the DOT map, and there's no such line, as you would expect. This is Stratford, town of Stratford. There's no really rural area. So these kind of issue that Mr. O'Mara raised in his report really is not applicable. It really raised a doubt how familiar he with this project. Probably my guess is he just wrote this up, from his office in New York City without getting into the detail or the context of this specific development. And the other issue, other than this comment letter that were raised in the last hearing and by others, is about traffic volumes. I think it's instructive to look at the police data they collected for 60 hours one of the police staff said, they collected 60 hours. The total number is 4,364. If you divide that 4,364 by 60 hours, the average hourly volume is 73 vehicles. So putting that context, what's the actual capacity of the roadway versus this average hourly volume? There's a rule of thumb in traffic engineering is that you can use about 600 to 700 vehicles per hour per lane as a sort of a standing for average roadway capacity. Now we have 2 lanes, 1 lane for each direction. In other words, at least we have 1,200 vehicle per hour capacity. And you compare that with the 73 vehicles per hour, you can see that's the actual capacity is 16 times the average hourly volume based on the volume collected by the Stratford Police Department. So there really is no capacity issue, whether you consider only this apartment traffic or the construction traffic. And we already pointed that out in our traffic studies. If you look at the level of service from the driveway, it's all A and B, Even if I adopted Mr. O'Mara's suggestion, use higher trip rates, you are looking at B or C level of service. What capacity constraints? There really is no capacity constraints. James Farm Road has more than enough capacity to accommodate this development. What I mean is including the construction traffic volume and the future traffic volume from the apartments. Also, the town attorney raised the side distance issue. If he had a chance to look at a report, and we looked at the side distance issue, there really is no side distance issue from the side driveway. Another word about the intersection offset. Attorney Rubin keep mentioning, why you are so concerned about intersection offsetting one town, not the other town. I said last time, it's the context of this development. Because if you look at the average driveway spacing, it's pretty sparsely spaced. It's not like one single-family driveway against the other. So in this case, we have a low traffic volume. We have a very large average spacing between individual driveways. So that's the reason I say this offset of the driveway with the honor rock lane is not an issue. I think that's all I have at this time. Any questions?
Thank you. Well, any questions from the commission? If not, Attorney Bellis, the floor is yours.
Well, I think at this time I'd like to give my closing rebuttal remarks, if that's all right. I know it's late in the hour.
By all means.
And I have a few exhibits. Let me start by saying that I was very upset by the testimony of that councilwoman who spoke to this commission. She absolutely violated the fundamental rules of fairness. She point-blank told Commissioners Posner and Giuliano that she and her political party helped get them elected. And she expected their support to vote against this application. I've never seen anything like that at a zoning hearing, ever. I've been doing this 30 years. I think it's unfair to these 2 zoning commissioners to be put in that position. I think it's unfair to the applicant. And moreover, I think it's downright illegal. There's a fundamental common law right of fundamental fairness in administrative hearings, and that's in our Supreme Court of Grimes versus Conservation of Litchfield. And this commission's always been good. They've listened to the testimony, they've decided the facts, and they rule. I just think that what she did was outlandish, and I don't know how my client or how a court will feel, but I just think what she did was totally illegal and not fair to these 2 gentlemen. I just wanted to get that off my chest. The Zoning Commission does not need detailed plans to decide if a zone change for affordable housing is appropriate. Another Supreme Court case. Certainly, you don't need construction drawings. They're not needed. And that's in Kaufman versus Danbury. So you hear all this testimony from the other side. Oh, it's incomplete. You don't have these details, this, that, and the other thing. You don't need any of it. So says our Supreme Court, and that's who I listen to. Again, when an application was filed to create an affordable housing zone, there's no requirement to go to the WPCA prior to getting the zone amendment. There's a zone change. That's another Supreme Court case, appellate court, I apologize. National Association Peoples versus Planning and Zoning, North Branford. What is the law is that if the application is denied by this commission, then the commission, not me, not the applicant, must show more than a theoretical possibility of harm. That's another Supreme Court case, River Bend versus Zoning of Simsbury. And I think that's I listened for days. I know it's late in the hour, but I didn't hear anything of a problem. Oh, you can't use a P word in here, I guess, with the microphone. Probability. I didn't hear any probabilities of harm. I've heard possibilities, and I'm not going to go through all the testimony, but possibilities is not good enough. There's cases of Machowski and Lord, a detention basin right over wetlands, and they said, well, it could fail, and 20,000 cubic yards of fill could go into the water course if it fails. The court said that's not enough. Sorry, it's a possibility. Same thing with traffic. There must be more than a traffic increase to be a valid safety concern. IMB Capital versus P&Z of North Haven, another appellate court case. As far as the protest position, I don't know that it even applies to 8-30G. I couldn't find any cases that says it does, so I'm taking the position it does not. 8-30G supersedes all the usual zoning standards, and accordingly, a court could even order the subdivision of property usurping the authority of the zoning commission. That was in Winowski versus Planning Zoning of Berlin. You guys, more than anyone, know the law as far as denying affordable housing plans because of safety concerns for emergency vehicles, for fire trucks, the adequacy of public streets for secondary emergency access, that you need a new inland wetlands permit application, you need a new site plan. These were all the reasons that were argued in the Avalon Bay versus Zoning Board of Stratford case. And the court said, as you well know, no. The need for that those theoretical possibilities of harm did not outweigh the need for affordable housing. You know it more than me. You've had to pay all that money to argue that case. So let me give you a few things that I want to submit for evidence. I've heard over and over that I'm not allowed to be here. That's the first time I was ever aware of that. I disagree with Attorney Kubik. I went to a bankruptcy court attorney. I'm not a bankruptcy court attorney, and I asked him to get permission for me to represent 500 North Avenue. He filed an application in the bankruptcy court. He handed me an order signed by a judge, and I'll give it to you. It says that the Pellegrino Law Firm, as special counsel, and Stephen Bellis in particular, can represent 500 North, and that any of the compensation that it's to get is not to come from 500 North, but from Keepers, Inc. So I can represent, I haven't taken any money from 500 North, nor will I allow anyone else to, and I will get paid from Keepers, Inc. or whoever the court asked me to. So I'm here legally, despite what Joe Kubik said, and I believe that I have the right to hire experts to help me present my case to my client. I hired Pat Rose's firm. He, in turn, I think Manny works for him as an engineer. They needed the consultation of a soil scientist. It was Mike Klein's firm. And we wanted expert opinion from a traffic engineer. There's nothing wrong with that. Here's the court order. Let me give a copy. I gave a lot to you guys. I want to point something else out here. In my in my amended application, which is Exhibit 3, I filed an amended application. It's Exhibit 3, and in it, it says that I'm applying for a zone change, and I said it was 4.6 acres. It says it right in it. And then they asked me to attach a legal description, and I did. And that's the area that I'm asking for a zone change. I'm not asking for a zone change on 15 acres. I'm asking for a zone change on 4.6 acres. And I put my legal description in there and attached it to my application. So that's what I'm asking you for. They're trying to put words in my mouth saying I want an application for 15 acres. I don't want 15 acres. I want my zone change to be for the 4.6 acres that I put in my application. Do I have to put all the property owners or all the property owners' land? Does that dictate a zone change? No. You people know more than I do that on some of the properties that we have in town, the zone change goes right through someone's land. You could be an R1, an R2, commercial on a little piece. It's not dictated by what the person owns. A zone change could be implemented across various owners or across a portion of a property owners. Am I hiding anything? No. You want an A2 survey, Joe? I got one. I got a lot of them. Judge Radcliffe says, they told us we have to go to wetlands, right? That's what they say. Send it to wetlands. Go ahead, planning and zoning. You don't do your job. Send it to wetlands. Well, I got news for you. I went to that trial. I was the trial lawyer there. Your town council, John Florick, he was the other counsel. You can ask him. He knows what the judge ruled and what he decided. We even had your Conservation Commission officer testify. I think her name is Christine, nice woman. She was pregnant at the time. I felt bad cross-examining her. But long story short, he said, you don't need to go to wetlands, Steve. Your client doesn't need to go to wetlands. You're not even in the upland review area. You're more than 250 feet away. And he said, you know what? He goes, I listened to the evidence about all the fill coming in. Go to page 70 and 75 of his decision. I know that it's sloped, it goes down to the wetlands. John, correct me if I'm wrong. He says, I don't care, that's not enough. It can't just be a possibility of harm. There was no testimony that there was going to be any impact on that wetlands. I sat through all these hearings and listened to all this stuff. I haven't heard word one about an impact on the wetlands. Oh, maybe if the wall collapses and some of the fill comes down. Again, everyone knows that that's a mere possibility. I even got, sorry, I forget his name, Mr. Retchin, I can't remember to say that if you move the galleys away, then he even felt comfortable that that wall would be fine. So you can't have a mere possibility of a catastrophe to say, oh, we got to send it to the wetlands. So I disagree, and I think if you send it to the wetlands, I'll go right back to court, and Judge Radcliffe will send you the same answer he did already. Can you move? Wait, archaeologist. That could have been my fault. I owe you one on that one. I think I submitted a unsigned copy. You got me on that one. Let me give you the signed copy. I did. I gave you an archaeology report. I don't know why I wasted the money. Joe Kubik said that his father saw some graves, but he wasn't sure it was on our property, but it may have been close, but he wasn't going to tell me where they were. I don't know. In any event, I did waste the money. And here's the credentials of the person I hired. I already gave you the report. I'm not going to bore you with it. We wasted all this time and money doing an archaeological survey. At the end of the day, UConn wrote a letter back to us dated June 24th, 2016. That was the people that they hired to say, hey, you ought to look at the historical significance and hire this archaeological reconnaissance survey. Well, At the end of the day, they said, based on the preliminary results of the archaeological reconnaissance survey and historic background research conducted, I concur with ACS, that's the people I gave you, recommendations that the site is not historically significant, does not meet the requirements for listing on the National Register of Historic Places, and therefore no further archaeological work is warranted. I'm reading right from the middle of it, and I'll submit it. Thank you. So, I know it's late. I'm going to cut this short. I said to you when I came up the first time, that we would put in an application, and we would listen to the commission's recommendations, we would listen to all the experts, and we would work with this commission. You know that, I told you that last time, and I was true to my word, and we had an affordable project housing that was approved. I'm not going to change my colors or stripes now, never will. And if there are some alternatives that you want implemented or conditions of any approval, I said to you before, I'll say it to you again, I'm not opposed to it. You want us to move the galleys away from the wall? No problem. You want us to install a catch basin and temporary sediment basin under the CLNP easement, if that makes you feel better about perhaps catching any sediment that may go to the wetlands? No problem. If you want us to even move the wall away from the CLNP easement more towards the interior of the project, we'll do that. If you want a shelf, if you really think that's necessary, I don't, but if you do, so that you can have this, whatever a vertical curve is for a private driveway coming out onto James Farm Road, I'll do it, or I'll recommend it. I'm not doing anything. I'll recommend it to my client. I couldn't build a shelf. Oh, never mind. My wife asked me to put a shelf up on her wall. I had trouble doing it. Whatever. Conditions of approval. Oh. You want us to, it's going to use a P word, implement the box turtle protocol? We'll do it. I'm not here as one of these, I can't even say the word, difficult attorneys saying to you, you take this project, it's an affordable housing project, and whether you like it or not, we're doing it. I'm not here saying that to you. I didn't say it to you last time. I'm not saying it to you tonight. If there's something that you think we ought to do to make this project better, we'll do it. The long and the short is I do not have to provide this commission with detailed drawings, construction drawings, or anything of the like. We have given you a little bit more than we normally do because I know it's an affordable housing project. Manny went out of his way and went in more detail because I am aware of the wetlands impacts. So we're not being jerks. I know the residents are behind me and they're giving me the evil eye, and I know they're upset because they've lived in this R1 zone their whole lives. I just want to say to them that I did not have anything to do with passing 8-30G. If they don't like it, as I said to you earlier, I think that there may be legislative means to try to get it changed, but that's not my job, that's not your job. Your job is to follow the law, not what a councilwoman wants politically or what the residents behind me want. That's not the standard. The standard is to find the facts, follow the law, and that's all I can ask you to do. If you have any questions to me, I'll be glad to answer them. It's so late, I'm sure you want to go home.
Any final questions?
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to make a statement for the record. Attorney Bellis, Attorney Kubik, Attorney Kelly, and Attorney Florick. While I cannot control what anybody comes up here to say, I can control my own actions. I am unbiased, and I am not beholden to anyone.
I appreciate you saying
Thank
that.
you.
That may help my client. Thank you, Mr. Foster.
Any other questions or?
I think I have everything. I'll take a quick look. I know I rushed because it's so late, but I think I got through what I needed. I think I'm okay.
Thank you, Attorney Bellis.
Thank you all very much, and I appreciate you staying late. And I know you're volunteers, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you again.
Thank you. With that said, I'll entertain a motion to...
Motion to close.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Peppin. Asked first. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
We hereby close the hearing at 11:37 p.m. Good job, Commission, for exercising a lot of patience and personal sacrifice to be at many long hours.
We're done?
There you go.
All right.
I tell you, I've been earning.